Hey everybody, welcome back to Desert Streaming. Marco here.
Katie
with
here.
Katie, yes. And we have a great friend, Ann Nolte.
Yes,
Ann,
dear friend. Yay.
Thank you for being with us on Desert Streaming.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And Ann comes from the Big Apple.
New York. Wait. She's New Yorker.
Amen.
Are you from New York originally, Ann?
No, I'm actually from southern Pennsylvania, Lancaster County, Amish country. About as culturally different as you can get from New York City on the East Coast.
Okay, but I will say, having spent some time in New York City with Ann, that you have adapted beautifully to New York City culture. And it takes because like it is in like so many senses the rat race that you hear about. You have to be tougher and a little more like assertive. And some people couldn't make that transition. Like, if you plopped me into New York City right now, I would be eaten alive. I'd probably be hit by a car. I know for sure I couldn't cross the street in New York City without someone hitting me. But you adapted to it. Like you are not a wilting flower. You are made for the New York hustle and bustle.
I have to tell you, when I got here, I felt like I found my people.
Awesome.
People in New York are very just direct and straightforward, and I'm like, oh yes, this is where I belong.
I fit in here. Like, I'm not offending people here. I'm speaking the way they speak. No, I think it's so impressive. I whenever I'm with you, you're always kind of zipping through Manhattan. I'm like, she's so cool.
Do you zip through Manhattan often, Katie?
Well, no, when I'm with Ann, I can't, I would get hit by a car. But you zip around in your car and you know the roads, and it's so cool. I feel very cool when I'm with you.
It's a great city. It is a great city. I see why people rave about it.
Yes, that's good. Yeah, I rave about it, and then I like to go home to slow Midwest, where everything's slow and people are very nice
in
and
Grandview,
meandering.
Yeah, exactly.
They're the opposite of direct in the Midwest, and I like it.
Well, Ann, we're really grateful that you're here with us. I know you've been a friend of Desert Stream for a while. Could you let us know, like, what brought you to Desert Stream? How long have you been around in our world, and what do you like about us?
What do you like about me and Marco?
Yeah, exactly. Particularly.
Aww,
Give us
you're my favorite.
Yay!
Yeah. So my husband is a huge fan of Desert Stream. He had been through the Living Waters leadership training several times, received a lot of healing through Living Waters. Became friends with Andrew. So I was introduced to Living Waters through friendship with Andrew, and I did the leadership training for the first time in 2014 as a participant under the encouragement of my husband, who told me how amazing it was. And then since 2020 when you started holding it at the TOB Institute.
It was about 2 years ago, so
2021.
2021. Yes, you're right. 2021.
Yeah. So reconnected in 2021 to serve on the leadership team at the Living Waters leadership training at the TOB Institute. Really amazing training, really amazing institute. Have really felt privileged to continue to do that each year since then.
Yeah.
And now running Living Waters in a parish here in New York City.
And that's amazing. And you're running a Living Waters in Manhattan, right? At a parish there. And how is that? I mean, New York City, definitely in need of Living Waters. And I imagine it's not an easy thing to start and to maintain. So how is that group going for you?
Yeah, this is our second go round in the New York City area. We did a group in Queens last spring actually, and now Manhattan. And honestly, this group in particular, really powerful. We have a good mix of men and women, really committed, really interested, really open. They're willing to go deep. They're willing to receive prayer. They're willing to engage. It definitely fills a need. So yeah, I feel like this is a foundational time, and it's laying a good foundation. It's been good. God is showing up, and so are the participants, and that's all. I mean, couldn't ask for more.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, we're so grateful that you do it, and you do it very well. Yeah. So you're a gift for us at DSM to have a group in Manhattan led by you is like a dream come true.
No, it truly
Will
is.
bear good fruit.
Yeah, for sure.
We're holding it at St. Catherine of Siena Parish, which is in Manhattan at 68th and First, and it's a Dominican parish, a Dominican run parish, and the Dominicans have just been so amazing. They've been really supportive in their prayer, supportive in their presence, really active in helping to identify people who would benefit from it. So that's been huge. I have to give a big shout out to them. They are
Dominicans.
Yes, we love the Dominicans.
Yeah, I don't really know what that means, but yes, I know it's not the country.
The Order of St. Thomas, not the Dominican Republic.
I know a little about these orders, but they seem lovely.
No, it's really great when you have advocacy. Katie and I have been super pumped recently because we've been trying to form like an Episcopal advisory board. So we got some like great names like Cardinal Burke, Archbishop Brolio, Archbishop Naumann, just amazing bishops from around the country who are saying yes and amen to Desert Stream. So the Dominicans too, we're really grateful for any sort of open door, for people to say, for priests especially, to say, hey, you can gather in this church as you walk with people who are in need of more focused help to become chaste, So we really appreciate that.
Yeah. And I'm sure you talk about this in your other podcasts, but
and you've not listened to every podcast, and you've not listened to every single episode.
I have listened to those podcasts.
Wow! I actually take back every nice thing I've said, and how dare you not refer
Katie gets
to
easily
the
offended.
Episode number and timestamp. No, the fact that we don't have many.
Feeling of this memory of my friend.
Exactly.
What I was going to say is Living Waters really does fill, I think, a void, and really does embody what Pope Francis says about the church. The church is meant to be a field hospital where you come alongside people when they're at their most broken. You meet them at that place. You walk with them out of that place of brokenness. And there's nothing like it. So I think the church is just learning about it. Our church leaders are just learning about it, but the fruits of it are undeniable. And so I'm so happy to see more and more doors opening.
Well, Anne, I wanted to ask you a little bit more about your personal work as a physician who helps women, especially with infertility issues. And I think what you're saying about Living Waters, that's so threaded in just what you do on a day-to-day basis, walking with people who do need the mercy of Jesus in very particular areas of their life. And I love that. Pope Francis has beautifully taught the world accompaniment. And I feel like you take it another step and give it a direction, especially in your work as a physician. So can you let us in a little bit on what that is, but also how Living Waters has helped you just even in your work as a physician?
Yeah, so I'm a family doctor by training, but I have what's called an area of concentration in women's health and fertility. And from my early years of training in medical school, knew I wanted to be faithful to Catholic ethics in the care that I provided to patients, and had really a strong interest in women's health, which is women's reproductive health. And essentially almost all aspects of women's reproductive health are fraught with ethical challenges, both for doctors as providers and for patients who are also trying to live out their faith. So I work in a Catholic medical center where we are able to offer women really faithfully Catholic alternatives to everything else that's out there. So we teach natural family planning for couples that are married and wanting to follow the church's teaching when it comes to spacing pregnancy, trying to avoid pregnancy. For women who have reproductive health problems, kind of the Band-Aid treatment most OBGYNs or family doctors will offer is the birth control pill. You just take this pill, it shuts off the cycle, your symptoms go away, and you don't worry about it. So we offer alternatives that don't just shut down the woman's reproductive system. And then a really big part of my practice is in the area of infertility, which is one of the most painful things that a couple can experience. I think unless for couples who haven't gone through it, it's hard to imagine how devastating that particular diagnosis is. And couples with infertility, when they go to a conventional fertility clinic, they're very quickly told, they do a little bit of testing and they say, your only hope is in vitro fertilization. You should do this, and you should do it as soon as possible. And in vitro just is highly destructive of early human life. So what we do is offer alternatives in each of these categories. So I've had really the privilege of working with single women and also young married couples on both sides of that spectrum, trying to avoid pregnancy and those trying to achieve but not able to. And I would say the thing that I think is just so beautiful about Living Waters. So in doing this work, I work with hundreds of really devout, beautiful young Catholic couples, right? They're the JP2 generation. They've been formed in this beautiful theology of the body. Like, they've absorbed it, they can quote it. And then when it comes to living it in marriage, really there's a lot of struggle. And it's very hidden because they're so devout and their friend groups are so devout. They often feel like we are the only ones who, like, we are not doing well in our early marriage. We're really struggling with chastity in our dating. And the teaching is so beautiful. It's so moving, but the brokenness and habitual sins, the addictions that make it very hard to live it out in relationship, they come crashing down on these young couples. And I think Living Waters is the thing we can give them to navigate that, to get to a place of being whole enough in their relating that they can be the gift they aspire to from this learning. So again, the reason I use the language of saying this fills a void is because I've seen it. You see these people with a desire, not being able to reach this goal that is deep in their heart. And then what do we have to give them? Where do we really send them? Good counseling is important. Of course, good mentorship is important. But unless you get into the healing of those deep wounds, the honesty of those deep habitual sins or habits, they're on a course for the destruction of the marriage. So wow. I love it. I really do love it. Infertility, I think, has the unique potential to become destructive of relationship, because both people can be hurting so much in that and experiencing it so differently, right? Because men and women are so different. Wow. How women deal with their sadness and how men try to fix the problem. Those things then themselves become the budding point. So I think it crosses the spectrum of what it has. Living Waters crosses the spectrum of who it can help and what it has to offer.
Yeah, I think that's good because speaking about theology of the body, and for those not so familiar with it, it's like this idea of, it's in the gift of marriage that you're most essentially alive. Of course, you can not be married and have that, but then it's about, bringing life. It's all about being open to life and be able to bear life in your marriage, and that's sort of being a co-creator with the Lord, which is so beautiful unless you get married, and then you can't do that. Yeah. And so it's beautiful work that you do to help those who it's like, okay, well, let's try to medically and scientifically work with your body to do what it was designed to do. And Living Waters is helpful because unfortunately sometimes, people are infertile, or it takes time to find the solution. And so Living Waters, helps you kind of deal with the reality of sin and the fall, and that our bodies made to do one thing can't always reach that capacity. So you do amazing work that, I don't have any personal sort of experience of it, but I've witnessed it firsthand with a few dear people, and your work is so important. It's so dignifying of the woman. And I think some of these, I don't know much, so correct me, but some of the medical treatment, the pill, in vitro, it's kind of dehumanizing a little bit in how they're treated. And, just, take this pill, or kind of you have to endure these really hard hormones and timings, and maybe then it can work. And it does seem like your work is holistic and honoring of women in really vulnerable ways. So I think that's beautiful. And that aligns with Living Waters, the dignity of woman and how beautiful her responsiveness is. And you you try to help women be responsive naturally in the way you can. So you do beautiful work, life-changing work. I mean, I know it must be so hard, but wow, you change lives in real ways. So good for you.
It's a privilege.
Yeah.
It really is a privilege. Every day I'm really inspired by these
Wow.
people who are really suffering. The world is holding out this carrot saying,
Yeah.
oh, just do this thing that your heart is telling you is horrifically
Yeah.
immoral and all will be well. And
Yeah.
just to get to walk alongside them as they say, no, I still believe God created everything. I still believe God's has a plan for how life is meant to come into
Yes.
being, and that I'm not willing to violate. It really, I feel like I get to walk with saints every day, or at
That's
least
amazing.
saints well on the way to being saints in the making.
Wow, sure. Really walking through the crucible of their faith. Like I'm going
They
to
do. Yeah.
sacrifice, that carrot to believe that life is sacred and the Lord plans it and I will be faithful. Like a lot of people, not to get into too much birth control and all that, because, Protestants have a different understanding of that. But, sometimes we don't have to sacrifice, right? We can be like, oh, well, pro-life. But when it comes to me and my marriage, like, I don't want to have kids right now. And so contraception makes so much sense, right? Like, oh, well, we don't have time to have kids right now and we love each other. And so the ones who can actually put into practice, like, no, we're going to sacrifice and we're not going to go on birth control, or we're not going to do in vitro because we believe in a biblical anthropology, is those people are saints. I think that's a beautiful way of putting that. Like they're putting their money where their mouth is. And I don't have to. I'm a single person. Like I can say all I want, but I'm not really facing those realities. So I love this idea that they're saints among us and saints in the making. That's beautiful.
Yeah, I really yes, please go ahead.
I would share with you, it is true. Obviously, many of our patients are Catholic. We do have a large number of patients who want alternatives to the pill in vitro because they're pro-life, whether, that are, there's the hormonal contraceptives. All of the hormonal contraceptives, they work primarily by stopping ovulation from happening, and that's how they keep people from getting pregnant. But there is evidence that all of them actually can work in some cases by preventing implantation. So they allow ovulation to happen. You can have sperm and egg combine in an active intercourse, but then the embryo, right, dividing, growing, about 6 days later, the embryo has to attach to the woman's womb to establish its source of nourishment. And hormonal contraceptives, the IUD devices, they can stop that from happening. So there's all of this. I mean, it's honestly really deceptive in healthcare. They redefined the beginning of pregnancy to implantation so that hormonal contraceptives wouldn't be considered abortifacient. But for people who consider themselves pro-life, regardless of their religious tradition, if they believe fertilization is when life begins, they don't want to use a drug or a device that can potentially allow that, but then lead to the death of that tiny embryo human because the baby couldn't implant. So it really isn't just Catholics. There's interest more broadly. And the same thing in terms of in vitro. People, in vitro fertilization, they take the eggs out of the woman's body, they take the sperm out of the man's body, they put them together in a dish. You have these embryos, these early humans starting to grow. And then they'll implant them, they'll freeze them. Sometimes they're frozen for decades. But on average, 6 or 7 embryos is destroyed for every baby that's successfully born through in vitro. So people who have that recognize the preciousness of life from fertilization, from what is the embryologic definition of conception, they want an alternative. So we do see really a broader spectrum than just Catholic. And then also those who just want something more natural, regardless of whether they're pro-life.
And you bring up some interesting points that just, I feel like, aren't popular today in terms, especially in terms of the pill. Like I think of, chapter 7 in the Living Waters guidebook on the renouncing of idols. Andrew mentions how the separation of the sexual act from the possibility of bringing forth life as a sort of step in the direction that is defaming the Imago Dei, to sort of ripping apart the harmony of men and women together. Once we sort of separate the act from babies, and it's like, why can't two people of the same sex now get married if marriage is no longer about permanence and new life? So in a way, he's making an argument. But all this to say, this stuff that you bring up about birth control, do you find that in your work, do you have to do a lot of education to women about this, or what are some good things that women could resort to, and men in fact, to just be educated on this? Because I feel like there's not many on-ramps in being educated on a very medical level about the implications of birth control.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah, exactly. So I'll kind of take a step back from that, but I will answer your question about where do people go. So when I was in medical school, I shared knew I wanted to follow Catholic ethics, but I was interested in women's health. We had in our medical school very, very vocal medical students for choice group, and they always wanted to debate. Like, if you don't believe in birth control, if you don't believe in vitro, if you don't believe in abortion, what do you possibly have to offer to women? Like, what are you actually going to do for them? And because of their questions, I learned about this approach to women's healthcare, which is called natural procreative technology, NAPRO technology, sometimes referred to as restorative reproductive medicine, that was developed by these Catholic doctors in response to Pope Paul VI Humanae Vitae, which asked for doctors to try to find a highly effective natural family planning method. As they're looking into the women's cycles, women's education about her body, to space children, they started to notice that women's fertility charts could be used as diagnostic tools to identify underlying problems and then correct them to restore health and normal function. And so this approach, restorative reproductive medicine, grew out of this ethical commitment and really focuses on finding out what is causing the problem and then correcting it to restore health and normal function, which doesn't sound that amazing. When you go to the doctor, that's what you expect to happen.
Yeah, that sounds kind of normal to me as not a non-medical professional. I'm like, isn't that what a doctor does?
That everybody should do.
Yeah.
So I learned about this and I thought, oh, this is just like what I'm learning in every other part of my medical training. When it comes to the heart, these things go wrong. This is how we make a diagnosis. This is how we can restore health and normal function, the kidney, the liver. We get to the women's health curriculum. The lecture, you spend about 6 weeks in each organ system. The series started with the chairman of the OBGYN department standing up and saying, the single greatest invention in the history of the world is the hormonal contraceptive pill in terms of the liberation of women.
Yeah.
Whoa.
So nothing to do, no statement about health.
Sure.
Then we subsequently went into like every problem, except for cancer, every problem that came up, you didn't have to there's a little testing you do, but everything is treated with the pill. Like, we have this magical pill that takes this organ and completely shuts it off. It stops it from working altogether and all the problems go away. And I just, again, having gone through all the organ systems, having gone through good medicine with the Catholic, this uniquely Catholic approach, all I could think was like, how have women been tricked into demanding like inferior care that is convenient for the doctor, as like, and been convinced that it's their right that they should demand?
Yeah.
It was so striking. And honestly, I was in medical school in the early 2000s. Women have woken up. Like, they are saying, why are you putting me on these hormones? I don't eat hormones in my beef. I don't drink hormones in my milk. Why would I put a pill in my body full of hormones to mess up my hormones? So I think people are getting smart, whether for ethical or religious reasons or just health reasons. So for people interested in learning more, if they just Google NAPRO technology, they're going to find great resources. There's a great website called Natural Womanhood that has a compilation of information about more natural methods for learning to track the fertility cycle, using that information both to avoid pregnancy or achieve pregnancy, women with regular cycles can actually only get pregnant for about 5 or 6 days out of each month. And the woman and as a couple can learn to identify that window very precisely, and use the information with a very high degree of effectiveness. So perfect use for modern natural methods of family planning for avoiding pregnancy are 99.5%, comparable to anything else that's out there. But the learning of the charting of the cycle then also becomes a diagnostic tool if things go wrong.
Yeah.
If they have trouble conceiving. So yeah, so highly recommend both of those. Dr. Thomas Hilgers is the founder of NAPRO Technology. He wrote a little layperson's guide, a guidebook for lay people called the NAPRO Technology Revolution that really gets into both actually just some of the health harms associated with the birth control pill, with the risks associated with in vitro fertilization, and then what these more natural alternatives look like. So would highly recommend any of those resources.
And I'm interested to know, what was your experience like as you were studying and you were kind of coming to this revelation, and it sounded like you were maybe a minority among your colleagues. How did you navigate that, especially with probably those in charge of your evaluation were maybe not on your side?
Sure. Yeah, it is.
And what do you say to medical students who are in the same boat today?
Or anyone really? Like I'm a lawyer, I'm a teacher. I was a teacher. Yeah. I mean, teachers face a different battleground, but sort of the way that we understand gender and sexuality nowadays is if you're kind of an Orthodox Christian, you become a minority amongst a sometimes pretty fervent crowd who believes not only what you're saying, they don't just disagree with, they think it's fundamentally hateful or unkind. So I think your advice to doctors, but also us who just like, well, I believe, man for women, and I don't think we should play God in how we have kids or when we do. So yeah, I think it has pertinent echoes for all of us.
Yeah, I would say yes, it did feel a little bit like navigating a minefield in training. It honestly has only gotten worse, and really so much worse that it's almost not recognizable how hostile the environment has been. So this will be taken scandalously by Christians, but medical students will understand this. I would actually never say any of the things you just said, Katie.
Yeah, sure. I wouldn't say it in the classroom. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. When you're in the vulnerable position of needing to get through training, you're being evaluated. You don't want to compromise on what's right or wrong, but really the key is humility, humility, humility. Just respect for the fact that the people that you're talking to are not in the same place, and honestly may not be able to hear even your humbly delivered, like, I just can't participate in these things. So I do mentor medical students. Any medical students who are out there, if they need a mentor, just look me up. I'm happy to help them navigate this.
Amazing.
It really is forming your own conscience ethically, really being clear about what you are and just are not willing to participate in because of your ethical beliefs, and communicating that humbly to the people who are supervising you. So I would just say, listen, I'm Catholic. My faith is really important to me. I'm not here to force my faith on other people. I'm not here to lecture people. I'm not going to tell anybody they're going to hell. I say that not because I would ever do it, but that's what people are assuming you're going to do. Try to head off their presuppositions. I want to learn everything that I need to know. I'm willing to counsel patients honestly with accurate information. But I really can't participate in giving a patient the birth control script, holding the retractor during surgery while you're doing a tubal ligation. Thankfully, I did my OBGYN training in a Catholic hospital, so there weren't abortions being done, but, I wouldn't participate in that. And then as you're kind of humbly saying, I can't do these things, I would always say, listen, if me not doing this is making more work for someone else, I will do their work. Like, I will do twice as much work to make up for the inconvenience I'm creating. And then number 3, be the best student in the room. Take the most time, spend the most time at work, spend the most time studying, be the most engaged in your lectures. When you're humble, kind, and really interested and committed to the general work that's going on, that the piece of, these things I can't do. There were times that it went further than that. For the most part, when you're getting through medical training, you really do, in my opinion, just have to keep your head down. I have friends and colleagues who did not get through. They were failed. It was purely discriminatory. It had nothing to do with their incapacity. It's the reality of modern medical training. And then there were other times where a situation was happening where I felt compelled ethically, even at the risk of my career, to speak up. And those were cases where, like, I think there was a case where it was unknown if a pregnant woman's baby was ectopic, like growing in the fallopian tube. And they were just going to do a procedure called a D&C, where they scrape everything out of the uterus, and then they were going to check if that's where the baby was. And I was just like, well, if the baby's there and the baby's fine, isn't that essentially doing an abortion? And they were like, well, yes, but that's how we find out if the baby's not in the tube. And so in a case like that, I just said, no, no way. And I thankfully it was like, the patient would never want you to do this.
Yeah.
So there are times, but I think that's where having a deep prayer life that you really remain faithful to through training, and then trusting in the Lord to give you the guidance when it's time to speak versus time to stay silent. You don't need to correct every slight wrong you witness, but the Lord does compel you in some cases, and then you got to step out of the boat.
That's good. Yeah, it seems like kingdom to me. Seems like seems like the kingdom of God to me. Like the disciples, kind of doing their work and bringing Christianity to the nations. And it was like, yeah, there was a time to speak and a time to be quiet and a time to dust your feet and a time to be the tent maker. So no one, it's like, that sounds like, okay, you're doing kingdom work, so it's harder, but the glory is the kingdom of heaven, not sort of earthly or temporal good. So that's amazing. I think it's good for all Christians. I hear that, I'm like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense for most people in their job. Like, that's very helpful.
Yeah.
And
oh my gosh,
let's bring the kingdom. We have to maybe work a little harder and be prudent when we talk and speak up when the Spirit is prompting us. I think the whole world would be better if we kind of adapted that approach.
And I don't want to stick here forever, but I do have so many questions. I won't ask all of them, but one of them is, it sounds like a lot of what you're saying is really forming your conscience well as a physician in particular. And what I'm finding today is my generation, we just don't have well-formed consciences. Our consciences have been so damaged and warped by many contributing factors of culture, very, very many things. What would be your advice, or what was helpful for you, like in terms of going through this process, like maybe having a small community of fellows who were also in the medical field, or maybe spiritual directors who are more calibrated to medical and ethical thinking, who could help you sort of form these opinions and these attitudes that were really helpful for you? Like what helped you, and what would be helpful for people today?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm glad you're asking it. So the Catholic Medical Association is a tremendous resource. It is an association of physicians that is completely committed to following Catholic ethics. It's doctors, nurses, pharmacists, but who are living it out and walking it out in real practice, who have been through training. So many cities across the country have guilds of the Catholic Medical Association that welcome students, mentor students. There is a Catholic Medical Students Association affiliated with it that is an excellent resource. And in particular, every summer, the Catholic Medical Association hosts a week-long Catholic Medical Student Boot Camp. So the students come together. I believe it's almost exclusively scholarship funded. I think they have to pay for their travel, but they spend about 9 days with other Catholic medical students, being formed in prayer, being formed in ethics, being taught these medical alternatives by just really excellent teachers. So there really is real support through that organization for students.
That's excellent. I'll make sure to link that, because I just know, even walking with some people through RCIA and different things who are physicians, and when they're coming to faith, they're realizing, whoa, I've never actually thought these things through. I've never read Humanae Vitae. I didn't even know people actually thought this way. Honestly, I've met some people who are like, I didn't even think people thought this way. And I'm like, okay, I mean, this is so our world, you know. But for some, it's like revelation. It's you know, and yet they need focused support to sort of gain a wherewithal to navigate these areas.
Yeah, the Catholic Medical Association, great, and for the same group of for those physicians already in practice, they have an annual meeting that is a mix of like medicine and being on retreat with other fellows. It's really well done. So yeah, I would highly recommend it. And if you're running into, as you walk with people who are having that kind of aha moment, like, okay, now what do I do? I've been a family doctor for 20 years and I've always prescribed the pill. I can't even imagine my practice without it. There's a great book. It's a little bit older now, but it's called sorry, I'm totally blanking on it. There is a great resource called Contraception Why Not. I'll get you the name of it. You can put it in the comments.
Yeah, and I'll put it in the show.
But it's a book that was put out by a group called One More Soul. Oh, it's Physicians Healed. Physicians Healed. And it's stories of physicians who have made that transition in their practice to to being in line with Catholic teaching, particularly around the issue of birth control.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, that's
usually there's a little dip. People lose patience when they make that change, sure. But usually within a few years, they are overwhelmed by people seeking them because of having made that change.
There's a gentleman in my parish, I won't say his name, but he's a physician, and he said he was in a meeting one day, and he walked back into his office, and there was a copy of Humanae Vitae. He says, still to this day, I have no idea who put it there. I don't know how it got there. I read it, and it changed my life. Wow. He not only converted to Catholicism, but he changed the way he did medicine.
Can you give us some insight into Humanae Vitae for those who don't know it?
Yeah, Humanae Vitae, kind of a revolutionary document that came out through really the prophetic papacy of Pope St. Paul VI, who wrote this really when there was a lot of, and please correct me, Anne, I know you know a lot about it. There was a lot of turmoil and discussion and debate about Catholics accepting oral contraceptives among us, like almost changing the ethos of Catholicism towards the contraception question. And Paul VI wrote this incredible document about the beauty of procreation, and like Anne alluded to, the need for physicians to opine in this area and to create other ways of let's say if a couple doesn't want to achieve pregnancy, other ways of doing that still respects the persons involved, still respects the systems, and in a way it's argued that this catapulted John Paul II in writing the Theology of the Body, because he wanted to give a more biblical anthropology to what the prohibitions were that Paul VI was saying. Not to say Paul VI was all like, don't do this, don't do this. It's honestly a great document. You should totally read it. I'll link it in the show notes. It's super easy to read. It's not long. I find it very accessible and really encouraging. But also as a prelude to TOB, I think it's changed, and we're changed the course of Catholic thinking in the area, and we're still unpacking the gems of it. I don't know what you would say to that, Anne, but that's kind of my take on it.
Here, exactly. I think of Humanae Vitae as like, it is short, it is simple reading, it's so worth reading, but it's like, what does it mean to love authentically? What does it mean to give yourself as a gift in the spousal relationship in marriage, in all aspects, and in particular, how does that translate into sexual intercourse and sexuality and the spacing of children? And it's written kind of directed towards couples, but at the very end, there are these paragraphs that are kind of like the call out to the clergy, to science, to men of science, to doctors. And Pope Paul VI issued a very specific and explicit call to each of those groups that is compelling, and it does call on doctors to as a moral responsibility. If family planning falls under their scope of practice, he says you have a moral responsibility to make effective natural methods available to couples. It's inherent in your vocation as a doctor.
So hi. that's a high bar if the Pope is
That's
calling
right.
you out.
It's not like if you have time, you should study this and think about it. It's you have the responsibility. So it was very convicting I mean, I was convicted before, but when I read the words, they were just like a lightning bolt. Like, this is not negotiable. This is my responsibility.
Yeah, it kind of ennobles your work too. It's like, wow, like you have a part of something so beautiful and sacred. It's so good to take it with the responsibility that it is. Wow.
And do you train a lot of physicians? Like what does that look like for you in terms of physicians saying, hey, I want to be trained in this or schooled in this? Do you do that, or who does that the best, do you think?
Yeah. So, medical training happens in different contexts. I don't teach at a medical school, but I do teach at this medical student boot camp most summers, not every year, but most years.
That's great.
And
so if you want to see Ann Nolte in person, you better sign up for this
but
boot
you
camp.
better also be a medical student.
Catholic medical student boot camp. Yeah.
Katie, maybe you and I could get some white coats and just act like medical students.
I think I told you this and you shuddered. I've watched a lot of Grey's Anatomy, so not Catholic nor medical, but I know how to put on a show in an OR.
To act like a doctor.
Yes, exactly. We need
to act
30
like a doctor acting badly.
Oh, I know. Like, you watch that show, you're like, why? I don't want to go into surgery. Like, they just had sex in the closet, and now you're doing surgery. It's like, God, I'm so scared of what germs could possibly be in this supposedly sterile room. But I could act out of my favorite scene from the show if you're interested. I know Catholics like art and beauty, and that would be beautiful.
That wasn't your favorite scene that you just described, right?
No, but I mean, that show is absolutely insane. It's absolutely crazy. They did a musical episode.
I've never seen it.
Oh, well.
And this is not an endorsement.
No, you shouldn't watch it. But they did do a musical episode where someone...
These views do not represent the views of
Desert Street. I know, me. They represent the view of me, and I have to be like, and I don't recommend it, but there was a famously horrible musical episode when they did there was a famous pop song that they sang while someone's on, this is how to save, I don't know, how to save a life. Do you know that song?
Yeah. How to save a life.
Someone was in surgery and the doctors would stop and sing. Has that ever happened to you? And have you ever sung during surgery?
No, I haven't, but I'm also not a surgeon. They do listen to music. There's some research that you do a better job if there's music.
Really?
Oh my gosh.
Any type of music?
I think it should be nice, like classical, not
probably not like Metallica.
Yeah, like blood and guts poured from the ceiling. It's like
that won't help.
That won't help. Okay.
So this boot camp, you got this boot camp, and then what other?
Yeah. And then students rotate with me, so they'll come and spend a month or a couple of weeks just seeing patients with me, and that's the best opportunity for learning.
Wow,
that's incredible. I wish I was a doctor.
I know, Ann. That's amazing. We Katie and I were discussing about how this intersects with pro-life. Obviously, we've spoken about that. How Desert Stream intersects with pro-life in terms of just our views of the human person.
Yeah.
How man and woman have these inherent qualities of bearing life, of siring life, and that we have a beautiful responsibility to become reconciled to those potentials in each of us, and that we can't bypass them because they're ours. And that doesn't mean that marriage is the end of all of our trajectories, but it is to say integration involves a face-to-face reckoning with the powers of life and love that I have in my body, And we immediately thought of you in terms of your work and what you're doing for the kingdom of God, which is really remarkable.
It's remarkable.
So we're just super grateful for you. We're so grateful that you do join us for these training teams. It's pretty awesome to have.
Yeah, she's very humble, but she's a very high caliber person. Yes. And I'm talking about Grey's Anatomy and singing songs I don't know the name to. And then I'm like, wait, Anne is my peer in this context. That really is what heaven will be like. It's like, oh, I'm peers with all these people who are just essentially more sophisticated and better than me. So it is a taste of the kingdom. I'm like, yeah, me and Ann Nolte, we're peers on a Living Water team. And that will be the only time that we would be peers because you are far superior.
True.
I mean, yeah, yes. But in some ways you are impressive. And so that's what I like about it. I'm like, I get the we're just doing the work of the kingdom together.
Yeah.
And when we gather, doesn't matter that you're a great physician and I'm not. We can listen to people and pray for them the same way.
And be united in this very, I think, needed, as you said in the beginning, there is a need for something like Living Water for people who are frustrated in living up to the TOB standard, which is a huge and beautiful standard. But people like myself who just need the bolstering of the church. And so we're just appreciative, Anne, of your commitment to it. So thank you.
Well, the feeling is mutual. I really do believe Living Waters is this precious gift. So, and it's been a great gift to me personally. So I just, mutual appreciation.
Well, Anne, thanks for being on the show.
Yes.
I'm going to link all of this stuff in the show notes.
It'll be very long show
but
notes.
it's such a great, just great stuff.
I mean, a wealth of information.
Gosh. Yeah.
It's why, you know so much.
Yeah. We'll have to have you, Anne. We'll have to have you on again, and just even to speak about some more focused areas of what you're doing, but also of this whole question of dignifying woman. I mean, that's I keep hearing that as you speak, like dignifying woman, not stifling her system because it's a nuisance or it's disruptive to whatever it is, whatever the case might be. But it's unleashing a dignity of woman and foregoing misogyny in various forms. But so we'll have to have you back for sure.
I really appreciate that.
I look forward to it.
All right. Well, bless you guys. Thanks so much for joining us today.